At Great Wolf Lodge, there's adventure for the whole family. You and your pack can splash away in the indoor water park where it's always 84 degrees. There's a massive wave pool, a lazy river, and tons of water slides for your pack to enjoy together. And the fun doesn't stop there. Get ready to explore and play at adventure-packed attractions from Magi Quest, a live-action game that takes place throughout the lodge, to the Northern Lights Arcade. There's also a bunch of great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. And the best part? With 22 lodges across the country, you're always only a short drive away from adventure. So bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Book your stay today at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack.
The primary purpose of Uniquely Human, the podcast, is to educate and inform. The views expressed during all episodes are solely those of the individuals involved and do not constitute educational or medical advice. Listeners should consult with professionals familiar with each individual or family for specific guidance.
Uniquely Human, the podcast, is produced by Elevated Studio. Music is graciously provided by Matt Savage of Savage Records.
Hi, I'm Dr. Barry Prezant, clinical scholar, researcher, and consultant on autism and neurodiversity, and a Brooklyn boy raised in the big city.
And I'm Dave. I'm none of those things, and I grew up on a farm in Illinois. But being on the spectrum myself, I have plenty of personal insight to lend.
And this is Uniquely Human, the podcast, a show that illuminates and celebrates autism and neurodiversity.
Barry, we have, it is running on Fumes Friday, but not for me. Why? Because I am a neurodivergent night person, we'll say, a night owl, a night finch. And so that's why I'm kicking off the discussion, because I've got nothing but energy here at this late hour on a Friday. We have a very exciting hat trick. Becca, Lory, Hector, everybody's favorite parent of Sir Walter Underfoot. Actually, there's a lot more names than that one, but that's the one that always sticks in my mind. Becca's joining us again today for the third time, and it's really exciting because every time we talk to Becca, we conclude the conversation by saying, you got to come back again because we didn't even scratch the surface.
So true. And one thing that we know is that on so many previous podcasts, the topic of nature seems to kind of be briefly commented on. And with Becca, we know somebody who is passionate about talking about that. So Becca, welcome.
I am so excited to be back. I love chatting with you guys. And this is a good topic for me. This is one that we're like almost in special interest territory. So you might have to hold me back.
Okay.
So this will be a 4-hour episode. Everybody just grab a blanket and a cup of coffee and
right.
and take a walk in the woods. Yeah.
I will say, like, this is a great topic too, because it maybe not so recently, but Becca and I moved to Colorado at around the same time, chasing the same dream that would ultimately fail to materialize. But we moved here at the same time. I ended up in a suburban utopia, all pavement and manicured tiny lawns and all that stuff. Becca moved to an area up in like the mountains that is gorgeous. And every time she would post a picture on Instagram, I was just like, how did I get this so wrong? I moved to Colorado and I'm still in a suburb. And she's in nature doing the real thing. So.
And has moved on since, which I think she'll tell us about. Yes,
correct.
I certainly will.
So,
and really, that's the story. That's the beginning, though, of the story, because it was like in search of nature and time outside that move really came about, and even the move that I made back to Maine, which is where I am now. Which, by the way, when we left Colorado, I said we must pick Colorado comparable. Like, it has to be as beautiful as Colorado, or I'm not moving there. I'm not downgrading from here.
From a natural beauty.
It didn't leave us a lot of choices.
Well, it's a tricky needle to thread for you because you hail from New York City. and very East Coast, like, frenzy. And then you go to Colorado, it's an immediate culture shock, but naturally it's beautiful. So it's a tough needle to thread to find something with that Northeast energy where it's not the creepy people waving hello from the
Right.
street saying hi, which is ironically off-putting.
It is. As a New Yorker, it's very off-putting.
That's right. It's like, why is this person greeting me? This is really
And
strange.
immediately, I assume you want something. That's why you're being so nice. What is it you need?
Get to it. Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah.
Right. But that was the shift. It was, I had grown up my whole life in New York City, and I really, really hated it. I hated every damn second of it. And I lived around a bunch of people that thought, you live in the best place in the world. How could you possibly want to leave the best city ever? Which is how every New Yorker feels about New York. And I don't know if that's the lie that they tell themselves so that they don't feel stuck. But that's what I grew up with. I grew up with people telling me that I was already living the best life. How could I possibly want to leave this place? And I hated it. And I hated it.
I
so
always
that's
like
the beginning. Yeah.
I always like, and you grew up in Queens, right?
Yep. I sure did.
And so in the neighboring borough, I grew up in Brooklyn, and I always like to say, oh yeah, wildlife to us was putting a piece of bazooka gum on the ground, watching the ants crawl over it and playing with the ants.
And it really was, though. It's like if you wanted nature, you had to really seek it out. It wasn't just there. You had to make an effort to find nature in New York.
Very
right?
true.
Maybe there's a tree like in your down your block or something. But if you wanted to get lost in nature, that's a search, that's a hunt, it's a drive most of the time.
Absolutely.
So it's really, it's a big difference from where I live now. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So if I might, I think some of our listeners who did not have the great fortune of hearing you on Becca Podcast 1, Becca Podcast 2, maybe want to know a little bit about you. So I'll just take a minute to share, and especially things that people could follow up on. So Becca is a passionate and seasoned autism neurodiversity advocate. She's a consultant, a researcher, and an author. And she's now based in Maine, as she said, and she's focused on living an active, positive life and brings the same energy to all of her work. That's why she's back. Her journey has led her to create tools and resources that empower others to embrace their authentic selves and living fulfilling lives. And as an openly autistic adult, she has poured her lived experience into her writing and teaching. Her recent book, Always Bring Your Sunglasses, and Other Stories from a Life of Sensory and Social Invalidation, which, by the way, was our focus of podcast number 2, right, offers a candid look at the challenges and triumphs of navigating the world as an autistic person. Becca's really busy. She has a lot going on. She designs and teaches a course called Self-Defined Living, A Path to Quality Autistic Life, and it's all about helping others to find their own path. And when she's not working, you will likely find her enjoying time with her husband, Antonio, a great guy, and there are many animals, and Dave already mentioned the king of the roost, Sir Walter Underfoot, the emotional support animal. So let me just pass it back right on to you, Becca. And you already kind of gave us a little bit of your story from Queens to Colorado to rural Maine. Yeah. And how about, I guess your perception of that from being a child now to being an adult?
Yeah, I actually, that's part of the reason I wrote my book in the first place, was for people to start to understand how incredibly difficult it was as somebody with as many sensory challenges as I have to grow up in a city like New York, and the difference it has made in the quality of my life to remove myself from that situation, right? When we're sort of born where we are, and that's, our parents' choice, and we don't have a lot of choice in where we start out. But, a lot of parents, as we're growing up, will notice that their kids are not doing great in whatever environment they're in and may choose to move them along. That was not the opportunity that I had. I didn't have the privilege of growing up with a family that had the finances to do that or any of those things. So we were in New York, and getting out of New York is really hard because everything's so expensive. So I spent a lot of my childhood dreaming about not being where I was. not being in my own body, not being where I lived, and not being just fantasies of escape all the time. And so once I was very later in life, identified, my identification came at 36. That was about 14 years ago now. I'm turning 50 in a few weeks, which is crazy to me that I'm still alive.
Life begins at 50.
I'm very thrilled. I feel like I'm on borrowed time. It's crazy to me.
I still see, for some reason see you as being like late 20s, early 30s.
Thank
50.
you. I
We're
will
the same
continue.
age?
Yes.
I had no idea. Oh, okay.
Yep. We
Wow.
we are. And I really just, I was living this miserable, unhappy life in New York, and everyone around me invalidated that experience. They
Right.
invalidated my sensory discomfort. They invalidated my anxieties around things, and they certainly invalidated the idea that New York should be a terrible place for some people, right? And it just is. It's not a match. And it showed itself in different ways, and where I ended up being able to attend school or not attend school. It showed up in, the things we were able to do in terms of family, in terms of family occasions, and going out places, right? And that kind of thing. And then certainly as I got older, it really impacted my work life, right? And what I was able to do for work, where I was able to go for work, how long I was able to sustain that. And most certainly growing up in a city like New York, where people are judgy and comparative, and certainly there's people judge you very materialistically off of the way that you look and the way that you behave and all of those things. It's much more of a microscope in that way. And so it's hard to succeed there if you're not someone who aspires to that part of life, right? And so it was just a tough thing for me. And I ended up towards the end of things, when I was really in burnout, looking for work that was night shifts, because I wanted to be opposite rush hour. Like all I wanted was to not be in Penn Station when everybody else was miserable and in Penn Station. So you know what? I'll go be a bartender and work at night, and I'll wave at you on my way home as you're headed into work. And that's how we're going to handle life. And that was those are the kinds of solutions that autistic people who are not identified come up with in their lives in order to survive, right? And you can see just how the lack of, or the state of the environment will really have an impact on how you're feeling daily.
So I'm just curious. I'm trying to envision the first time you really were immersed in nature and what it felt like. Because I remember, I think I wasn't until 17, and then we went up to Baxter State Park in Maine. And it was like, oh my God, there's this whole other world of tranquility and quiet and animals. And it was like, okay, it took me 17 years to figure this out.
Yes, that's exactly how I felt too, Barry. Like really similarly. Like I read about nature. That's what you read about. You read about nature. It's science fiction nature to a New Yorker, right? If I've never experienced it, especially as an autistic person, and it's only theoretical, it might as well not exist, right? And so that was really, I was like, great, that's so lovely that somewhere on some timeline people are enjoying the woods, but I live in New York, right? And that's not going to happen for me. And so the first time that I really found out it was real, which is exactly what it felt like to me, like to find out that, oh, the woods are real. There really are places where you can truly get lost because you're off the trail and things like that. That's a real thing. And so the first time that happened to me, I was in my early 20s. I was dating someone, and we went on a trip up to the Berkshires in Massachusetts. And I could have stayed there forever. My jaw must have been on the floor the entire time. I'd never felt so at peace in my whole life as I was just like being able to be without people watching all the time, right? And just the silence and all the way that everything shifts. And it was in that moment I really knew, like, oh, you don't have to live in New York. You don't have to live like that. That's insanity. And you can opt out. Like, you can do that. And that was right around, a really important time in my life when I was really uncomfortable, right? It was like, I remember uncomfortable 13 to 15. And then I remember uncomfortable in the early 20s when everyone expects you to be a grown up already. And you don't feel like one inside. And that's kind of where I was when I found that space. And it was like, oh, can I make the adult decision to not live in New York? Can I make that happen? So that was the first time. The second time it happened to me was in Colorado, though. And so I will say, if you ever get a chance to do Red Rock State Park and you would just find yourself there, go for a walk. Don't worry about the music. Go for a walk around the park itself. You have never heard silence so loud as you will hear in that space. And that gave me goosebumps. And I was like, well, maybe it's Colorado. And that was it.
And it doesn't hurt that your immediate connection when you're in a space like Red Rock State Park or Garden of the Gods down in the Colorado Springs, anywhere in the foothills, up in the mountains, anywhere, heck, even in the plains on the eastern side of Colorado where you can see the whole Front Range, it doesn't hurt that there is virtually nothing interfering with your comfortable direct engagement with the earth and the environment. Like I grew up in the Midwest, and if you wanted to go outside, you had a hefty price to pay. You had to love dewy, thick grass in the morning or very humid evenings. You had to love mosquitoes. You had to love high winds all the time for no reason. In Colorado, dry air, no bugs. And it's just, you're just in nature without any of the, we'll say, prices of admission.
Yes. Right. It doesn't drain you, right? It doesn't give you all that sensory, right? That sensory overload doesn't happen. It's just,
Correct.
you're not bothered. I don't know how to describe that other than like you're unbothered, just like poo. I'm unbothered when I'm in that space. And I think that unbothered space is what autistic and neurodivergent people are desperately in search of all the time. Like just we do it by going to seek alone time because we assume alone time is the only way to get that silence and that unbotheredness. But I think we find that same space if we take ourselves out into nature and we take ourselves out into a space that is minus the people. You'll notice that when you minus out the people, you also minus out all of those social obligations, the communication obligations, the obligations to, be polite, right? Or to dress appropriately, go out the window, all of that stuff. And so you're allowed to just be and just in the present.
Yes, no tree or rock or stream has ever been a pain in my ass, has never demanded anything from me that was an unfair ask.
Yep, that is correct.
Unless you wanted to climb the tree and you say, wait a second, why are you so tall? But it's funny, Becca, when you said when you were first out in Colorado, you mentioned something about goosebumps, and I thought right away, oh wow, the loudest noise here is my goosebumps.
Yeah. That's what happens out there. And it's so, if you come from a place where you're used to input all the time, right? It's auditory, everything. New York is just input. That's just, if I had to describe New York in one word, I just want to be like, it's input all the time.
Input all the time.
And so, to experience the lack thereof for any amount of time for someone who's sensory sensitive, it's recalibrating.
Yeah.
It's really just like, it's like taking a Xanax. You know what I mean? It just very much regulates you almost instantly. Your body just kind of is like, I can just be. I don't have to be on guard all the time.
Yes. There's a little dichotomy that's spoken about. I'm going to go academic for a moment about children's development. And a lot of the early infancy research spoke about protective factors and risk factors. And I think about the environment could pose a ton of risk factors if you're sensorily sensitive and you don't like a lot of people around you in movement, and nature provides protective factors. Yeah. So what does it feel like? And I guess I'll throw this at both of you guys. We'll start with Becca. Literally, what does it feel like deeply in your body? We put so much energy into staying well regulated. It sounds like, okay, the effort to stay well regulated doesn't have to be so heightened when you're out. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like you're not fighting through so much to find that regulation is what it feels like, right? I think a lot of our stuff, a lot of our challenges comes from the fact that we are not built for the world as it stands, right? The way that it is. We don't opt into social hierarchies. So none of that stuff works for us. We don't really subscribe to groupthink. So that part of society doesn't work for us. We tend to be sensitive in a lot of areas many areas across the board. And so we need to be taking in less most of the time. We also take a little bit of extra time to process a lot of the time. And the world can come at you too fast when you live in those kinds of spaces, right? There's not so much forgiveness for processing time or taking time to think about the words that you would like to say before they come out of your mouth, right? A lot of people in big cities don't tolerate that kind of blank space. Right. There's a lot of intolerance about that stuff. And so when I get to what I want to say is regulation can't happen if you're always in that up place. Right. And so the reason moving out of that environment was helpful to me is because it took away like half of the things I was battling just to move out of that space. Right. All I did was leave a city and choose rural life. And by choosing rural life, that set the stage for me right away. The next thing that happened in rural life for me, which I find fascinating and would love to one day look into, is the fact that when you look at rural communities really closely, people there, even if they have political differences, religious differences, thinking differences, whatever it is, people are tolerant of all kinds of differences as long as you are a participating member of that community. Right? There's not judgment about clothes or what kind of car you drive or when you got your haircut last or all of those things, right? There is judgment about, are you kind to your neighbor, right? Are you keeping the neighborhood clean, right? Are you taking care of your property? Are you, right? And that's where, and those are things that align very much with autistic thinking, right? They are logical, they're reasonable to ask of people, it's clear rules that everyone's subscribing to, and it's not about social hierarchies. It's not about those things, right? And we don't see challenges for the kids up here that are neurodivergent in terms of workplaces in the same way. It's not the same kind of bias that they face in rural communities, right? That we face in cities. So there's other parts to deciding to move out of a loud people-y space that just takes us to the way we naturally function. We function more easily in those environments. They're set up for our needs a little better. And that makes the trip to regulation that much easier, right? You're halfway there just because you woke up in a different space. And regulation after that, because you start to recognize it, because then I didn't know what being regulated felt like until I got out of the city and spent some time out of the city. And then I started to feel what regulation could feel like. And then I could try to replicate it, right? But you can't replicate something you've never experienced. And so it's like, that to me was the journey. It was like, I'm clearly overstimulated. I now have a word for it and I need to do something about it. And for me, right, it's not for everyone. For me, I knew that a lot of my challenges came directly from where I was living. And I needed to change that for myself, no matter how scary that idea was.
Which is wild, because not everybody, I would be somebody who would say, oh, this is just the environment. Like, this is what life is like. You actually were able to say, like, yeah, even though I was born here and spent my whole life here so far, this isn't working. This isn't right. That's I think really important, but also something that hopefully families, parents or whoever can also be kind of checking in with everybody in the family, saying, like, how are we still feeling about living where we are? Like, you guys like this? Never mind, like, friends and this and that, but like, just how does your body feel where we live?
Right. Like, how do you feel when you wake up in the morning? Do you want to throw up out the window because of where we live? Like, because that's literally, I would wake up and look out my window and in New York and just like, all I wanted to do was close it and go back to sleep. Just please. No, thank you. Right. And I did. I isolated. I was one of those autistics that isolated in my room all the time because I hated outside of my room was like awful. Right.
Yeah.
It was just awful. I had no control of it. And so I think about that. And I think that's a really important thing to bring up. I have a couple of different families in my life and my personal life that have gone on that journey, Dave, because they've seen what's going on for their kids. And they're like,
Amazing.
even though we like living here, it's not working for us as a family.
Amazing.
And we got to go. And sometimes, and actually one of my favorite stories is one of those families, they went on a journey together to figure out where the best place was. So like, okay, we don't know. Just because we're your parents doesn't mean we know all the answers. And like, they were like, let's sell our house. Let's buy an RV. We'll do the country and find our next home as a family. And they went, right? And that to me gives kids a lesson that is real about life. This is how you solve a problem. When you
Mhm.
don't know the answer, right, you go in search of the answer. And this is how
Wow.
you go about finding the solution. Now, that's a lesson you use all the way through adulthood, right?
Mhm.
Of
How to make
course.
good decisions, how to make moves like that. And what better way to do it than do it with your parents? You couldn't be any safer, right? Your kids couldn't be in a safer place. So let them figure it out.
This sounds like a new kind of side job for you. It's Becca's relocation services, and
Well, no, I'm not that much of a courtesy person. I won't be nice to you, but that's why I fit in New England so well. I'm kind, but I'm not nice. So I'll give you some links and those kind of things, but somebody else has to find you where you're going to eat breakfast and all of those things.
yeah.
That's not my game.
So is it fair to say, this just came to mind, is it fair to say that, living in a place where you're assaulted by things that you can't really deal with, but you still need to be in the world somewhat, as opposed to a place without that pressure, that you just need to mask less
Yeah.
when there's a lot less pressure on your life, whether it's social pressure or sensory pressure or whatever, as opposed to, if you're choosing to isolate yourself to survive, that's one thing. But if you need to go out, then you have to deal with that. And a lot of that, I imagine, would fall into
Well, right.
the
It's
issue
not
of masking.
voluntary isolation, right?
Yeah.
You're forced into isolation. And that's what happens to a lot of people in our community. They're forced to isolation.
It's survival.
Right. They've tried to survive for so long and then they hit burnout. And burnout, autistic burnout, which is another thing we should do all the paper on, the difference between burnout from work and autistic burnout, which is really different, right? And when you get to autistic burnout, the only solution is isolation. That's it. There is no recovery without isolation. And that's not like, oh, lay down for a week or 2 weeks. That's like most of us take upwards of 3 years to recover from autistic burnout. And so we're not talking about a small amount of isolation. We're talking about years of someone's life in isolation to recover from that and to slowly be able to get back up the skill sets that they had before burnout. We see a lot of skill set regression that happens with burnout. So, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about what nature does for you as far as creativity. I'm just curious. I'm a visual thinker, and I'm just imagining Becca kind of prancing along in the woods. What are you drawn to? Are you drawn to the birds? Are you drawn to the flowers? Are you drawn to the fusion of all of it? And where does your mind go at
Yeah, it
those times?
depends. If it's a place that is well known to me, I have my favorite spots and I'll make sure that I stop in certain areas. If it's a new place though, I'm sorry to whoever's with me. I'm like the annoying dog that stops at every sniff spot and I have to look at every little thing that I think might be interesting, right? Because the rest of my life doesn't allow me to be that present in the now. The
Yeah.
rest of my life, my brain wants to prepare and be ready for all the things that are going to assault me out in the world, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I know when I'm out in nature, that's not going to happen. And so I can let that guard down, relax into my body, and just kind of enjoy whatever it is I see. And that's the side of sensory issues that people don't talk about, right? As sensitive as I am to light and how painful as that can be, when I see something that's beautiful, because my eyes are that sensitive, it's that much more beautiful to me. So when I spend time in nature, I'm actually energizing myself. But it's sort of like a strengths-based approach, right? Like if I do more of what feels good to my sensory system, then the more regulated I'm going to feel. And so what feels good to my sensory system is quiet, right? Listening to animals, seeing new things, seeing nature just as it is and untouched by our disgustingness, right? Just as existing.
Yeah.
I like to see that stuff. I have dreams of like disappearing into a forest and, just becoming, like a little forest creature that, they talk about in town because they never see her, right? That's my dream, is to be like a little weird witch lady in my forest that
You'll
never
be like
comes out.
Sasquatch. You'll be in the
Yes,
background of
I just want to
videos.
be a rumor in my town. Does she exist? I don't know. We've heard Antonio has a wife. Nobody's seen her. That's
She's a
what I
legend.
want to be, like that lady, right? Because that's when I feel regulated. When the whole outside world and all of its stupidity cannot touch me, I feel the most regulated. And that's what happens for me out in nature. Other people find that regulation from literally the touching and the feeling of the trees, the way that it feels. The smells out there can do that for me.
Yeah.
All kinds of stuff like that. I like to see nature being nature. especially as someone who never got to see that as a kid. It's still very much my inner child that gets to be kind of fulfilled in that way. So that's what happens for me. And I think people can do that walking, you can do that running, you can do it on a bike, you can do it with someone, right? You can do it with your dog. Sometimes I take Walter, sometimes I'm annoyed by him. All of that is, par for the course. But I know that if I don't have access to that space of regulation on a really convenient way, like I can't have to get into my car and drive there, I have to be able to just go out my door and go, I know I feel better on a much bigger basis. And it's like that piece is what made me want to look into autistic quality of life and what are the things that add to our quality of life as autistic people, not as just human beings, which is the information that we have out there now. Because this nature regulation piece, the connection with animals that we have, the desire for safety and calm, and that really, which we're calling gruntle, which is just that state of the opposite of disgruntled, of just being, right? That is what autistic people are seeking. We don't want a roller coaster of a life. That doesn't work with our body systems. And so I think that's sort of where all that lies in together, is how do we say, no, we need a certain amount of that time to recalibrate in our lives. It's important. It's one of our boxes, like food and shelter.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Learn more at asuonline.asu.edu.
So you speak to and support, in many cases, so many autistic and neurodivergent people. I guess two questions are coming to mind. One is kind of a simple question, and that is, do you feel that nature plays the role for so many, or potentially could play the role for so many of the people you speak to? And what is the level of awareness, especially through your support activities? Do you find that you're saying to other autistic or neurodivergent people, you need to get out in the country more? or
Sometimes, because sometimes we're stuck for lots of reasons. Autistic people get stuck a lot. We get stuck in our thoughts. We get stuck in inertia of, like, if we hit a place of exhaustion and then we recoup, but we can't get the motivation to get back up to go do the next thing, right? Yes. So we get stuck in inertia. We get stuck for a lot of different reasons, right? And so what I say to a lot of the people that I coach is make sure that you're always in motion. Don't let the inertia set in. And that some of it is make yourself go out and go for a walk. The stupid internet yells at us for going out to take a walk, right? But it works, and I hate to say it, it works. And so I do go for a walk for my stupid mental health, right? I go because it does work, right? And I frankly would rather go for a walk than add yet another medication into my system, right?
Absolutely.
So if I have the option, I'd rather go for a walk. And often I will say to people, well, give it a try. Like, if it doesn't work for you, don't keep doing it, right? But try it, because without trial and error, you're never going to find the thing that does it for you. So you have to try. And sometimes we need to push ourselves because the brain likes habits. So if we're in the habit of sitting still all the time, our brain just wants to stay there, right? But if we start creating a new habit of moving once a day, then your brain's in that habit and it wants to do that. And so we have to learn to trick our own brains in that way. And so I do say to people, stay in motion, right? Even if some days you're so tired and all staying in motion means is that you put your laundry in or you did the dishes, right? And that was it, or sent one email. But just stay, don't let the inertia settle. So yes, I push people. But some people, like you and I, Barry, have never experienced it. And so they don't know what they're missing, and they don't know what that feels like. And so you have to be like, go try, because you don't know, right? I never went really kayaking that often. I went on a canoe and a few things, but now I kayak regularly because I found that the smoothness of that motion and being able to see nature at the same time might be the most epic, like, regulation, I don't know, grounding activity, everything, right, that I can think of. Because that motion is really helpful to me. That, that's another piece of it. And so I wouldn't know that if I didn't go out there and try. And so some of it is that. Some of it is, no, you're right, you might not like it, but let's find out, because otherwise we can't get to where it is where you find what you do like.
And what do you think about, and of course this would be very individualized, the role of doing nature with a loved one or friends as opposed to giving yourself the space.
I think, that's a personal thing, right? And sometimes I do want a person with me and sometimes I don't. So it's not like you have to pick one lane and stay in it, right? That can be just like our functionality, it can float all over the place. Some days you want to share that space with someone, some days you don't. Sometimes it's about the people. There are some people I will share that space with, and some people I will not share that space with, right? Because they won't understand it or they won't appreciate it, much like some people won't share their special interests with people.
Right.
They don't appreciate it, right? I hate
I've
it. I
I've
know.
learned not to open my mouth if I love
Yep.
something.
Me too. I am Zippo, right? Because it's really tough, especially when you know a lot about your special interests and the person talking doesn't know anything about
Or
and
they
you just want to correct, but that's tough,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Or they give you
And so,
reasons like, oh, well, that's dumb because it's like, why would you do that?
right,
Like, why would you take a chocolate milkshake? I wouldn't walk up to you if you loved your car and just
yep,
had it waxed and dump food all over it. Like, why
right,
would you say something shitty about my
yep.
thing that I love? And they always do it.
They do it. They yuck our yum every single time.
Yuck our
Every
yum. Yes.
Yep, that's what happens. And so we are very sensitive about that and about who we share that stuff with. And I am that way about my space and nature. There are some people I will share that with, and some people who I will just say, yeah, there's a great kayaking spot over there. I'll tell you how to get there.
Right.
Like
Right.
that. Yeah.
But that accountability partner thing too, I was thinking like nature accountability partner, meaning if one of the motivators would be, hey, uh, I want to share this experience with somebody, but I don't want them with me on, we'll say, the trail if it's a hike, right?
Mhm.
Just saying, I'm going this many times this week. How many times are you going? Maybe that's one way to do it too, without having to make it a social thing.
Yes.
You
Or
know?
sharing pictures. I share pictures all the time
Mm,
with people, right? Oh, I went to this great, gorgeous place. Let me show you the picture that I got, right? Because I'm
Mhm.
not a photographer. Nobody trained me, but I like taking photos because again, it's part of that visual sensory thing, right? And so I will share that with people, right? Like I'll share with you this gorgeous place you missed because you're a turd. Here we go. Let me show you. Like that's, and I will do those things and share it that way. There's also sometimes it's physical, right? We have some people in our lives who physically can't go on a hike with us, though they would spend time outside with us, right? And so we can still come back and share with them what it was like. We can take video, we can do FaceTime, you can share with people so much. But co-regulation, which I think is what you're talking about, Barry, which is really, a partner to go on the regulation journey with you,
Mhm.
is one of the most successful tools that I think that we have as human beings.
Mhm.
Because the one thing that will never regulate an unregulated person is another unregulated
Oh,
person.
totally. Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah.
do not come to me unregulated when I'm having a meltdown. You and I are not going to do well together. Right.
Mhm.
And so if you really want to help someone who's feeling unregulated, getting yourself regulated is the best way to do it. Right.
Yes.
And so if we go out together, now we are co-regulating. Now we're both feeling good. And so we can talk about the thing that's hard.
And
Right.
it's
Or we can, right.
and it's amplified by the environment that you're in.
Yep. Yep.
So it's
100%.
yeah, one thing that's coming to mind, and I always have these little, and this is positive, little thought intrusions. I remember consulting to elementary school, and there was a 7-year-old who got so freaking upset. This was on the coast in Massachusetts when there was an oil spill, and everybody marveled at his sense of social justice. How could this happen? And he actually helped to organize and lead a beach cleanup. And was there for like every day for weeks,
Yeah.
with his friends to do that. But everybody was so astonished, like this innate sense of justice about the natural world and the environment.
Yeah, well, it's part of our justice sensitivity as autistic people. We are definitely, that's why we don't do groupthink, but we certainly can tell right from wrong. And we will tell you when we see right from, like, that's the way that it is. And I think, people don't understand how that can have impact in your life and, how the choices that you're making or who you're choosing to be with. And so it does.
And
Well,
he wouldn't have had that sense of justice if he hadn't taken the walk on the beach for years with his parents when he was young. So it's
Right.
almost
Like
like
that's a place that, right here, it belongs in his heart, that place. That's a special place. right? Again, some
Absolutely.
places we don't share with everybody. And to see other people disrespected is like someone poo-pooing or yucking your yum. Don't yuck my yum.
Hmm.
Take care of my yum. It's
Hmm.
beautiful,
And
right?
I'm trying to think of the families who are listening who are like, awesome. Well, my financial situation is such that I live in the middle of Cleveland
Yep.
and or Cincinnati or something, and like, yeah, I work 20 hours a day, two different jobs. We'll get out in nature when we can. And I start to think like, well, that's absolutely the case for so many people. And I just wonder there has got to be after school things or like summer thing,
I think there's
anything we
that,
can
but
do.
also you can bring nature in. We bring nature in all the time. And if
Hmm.
that's what's happening for you, right? If you're in that situation, I certainly was in that situation most of my life where there wasn't, it was a process and money to go where you wanted to go. But we can bring that stuff in. Right? We can opt to grow plants in our home. We can opt
Hmm.
to have fish and birds and cats and dogs in our homes and share that space, with animals and things like that. And then we do have to, if that's the life that you're living, make an effort to take the time out of our month or our week to find those spaces, to go out of our way and get ourselves some of that space. When we think about, I mean, human beings are animals. It's really, I hate to say it so that way, but we are, which means
Yeah.
that we're not really totally built to live in cities, right? We're not really biologically in that sense built to be there. So anybody who's not getting exposure to those things is missing out on parts of life. So to make space for that in your life and to be able to, honor that piece of us that is still, we're still hunter and gatherers under here. It's really not that exciting. We haven't changed that much. And so we need to honor that piece of ourselves. And the other part of this that is really woo-woo, but I'm going to go there with you guys,
Do
um,
it.
is that we really oppose our own nature in terms of the seasons, right? We follow a calendar year that makes no biological sense to our bodies, right?
Wait,
So
tell me more about this. What do you mean?
I will. I am writing about it right now in my newsletter. I'm doing this whole year called Seasonal Living,
Hmm.
where I'm trying to encourage people to follow their energy as it goes with the seasons. And I
Hmm.
say that by reminding you of the holidays and what the holidays feel like, right? In December, November, December, we start to slow down because socially, everybody is wanting to be together with family. Oh, it's the holidays, work stops mattering, all of these, we kind of shift and slow down in a very obvious way, right? In December and early January. And then all of a sudden, somewhere after New Year's, it's usually like January 15th or so, everybody kind of wakes up from their slumber and realizes they're in a new year. And oh my God, I haven't done any of my resolutions and I have to start moving again. And it's January 15th. And oh my God, right? And that's what the calendar says. But our bodies don't do that. Our bodies slow down intentionally in the wintertime and
Hmm.
ask us to rest and ask us to slow down and not do too much, which is why when we slow for the holidays, it feels so good because it's
Hmm.
exactly the right time of year seasonally for us to be slowing down. When we ask ourselves to turn the switch from slow down hibernation into that space of, I have to wait, I'm back at work, things people are looking for my emails, I gotta blah, 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 and we don't naturally transition like the seasons do, we feel it. You'll hear everybody complain. You'll hear
Hmm.
everybody feeling tired. Everybody's blah, blah, blah. And we're like, oh, the calendar flipped. I need resolutions. It's January 1. I have to change everything. Right. And all of that comes from stuff we've imposed on ourselves as a society. Right.
Hmm.
That's not how we work. Our bodies are like, no, I slow down till like March. And then around in March, the lights gets longer. And I'm like, oh, I have more energy. Let me go do more things. Right. And so that's usually when we encourage people to really start doing goal setting. Right.
Hmm.
Oh, you're waking up, you're feeling energized, you had your period of rest. Now you start to chase goals. Right. In that springtime, you start to set things up.
Hmm.
Right. And we spend just like farmers, we spend our summers all busy doing
Hmm.
all our productivity when the weather gives us that much daytime. It gives us all of that comfort time to be outside, right? All of that stuff aligns with that. And then fall comes and you naturally want to start to slow down again, right? You can feel it. And if we worked with our bodies on a system like that, instead of just deciding random days mean a certain thing and that we all have to participate, right? We could follow more closely our own rhythms and when it's time to start doing new things and when it's time to rest. And that's something that I think we've taken away from ourselves as human beings, is the ability to recognize the spaces when we need to rest. And we don't let that in because society tells us we should be busy.
And that does demand and actually could nurture much greater self-awareness if you pay attention to that, to be able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's sort of what I've been challenging the folks that signed up for my newsletter to do with me this year, is not rush through January, not give in to that January thing, and know that there's still another few months of winter left, right? And so you're still in that slow season. And that means, you know, as you get towards the end of it, you know that it's going to start coming. You can start to think about moving, right? What plants do I want to plant this season? Should I get bulbs yet? Not sure. Like, those are the end of winter thoughts, right? Not, you know, hurry up, give me the bananas. They should be grown and ripe already.
Yeah. Right.
So,
It's nature isn't wrong about what it does. And so if we actually pay attention to that, you know, it's been a very strange, Kristen and I have commented multiple times now, here in Colorado. It's been, we didn't get a winter per se, in the traditional sense. It never felt like the world shut down because the world was covered in snow and it was too cold to do anything. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, this beautiful weather. I'm like, no, it's not beautiful. This is terrifying. And it almost feels like when the tulips come up in like the second week of March and all of a sudden it's April 1st and every tree is already green. I'm thinking, you know, nature didn't get its nap. It didn't get its winter break. And you know, that we feel it, Kristen and I feel like there was never that reset that occurs that drives us or propels us through spring, because we never quite went to sleep. And I think if you pay attention to this, how nature does things, and you can get closer to its rhythm, obviously the more naturally, I guess, well, we would all feel.
Well, we in the Northeast could have sent you a lot of snow. And
we did. We're still having it.
I was going to say, you're still getting buried under. So, yeah.
No. We're finally breaking out here.
Okay.
I mean, one thing that's striking me is, you know, we talk a lot about emotional regulation plans, but usually that is, okay, from when you wake up in the morning till you go to sleep at night. You're talking about emotion regulation plans that are seasonal across a year.
Yes, because I really think that what we did to ourselves was to take out our rest period.
Yeah.
Right. If we went back to all living on like a farmer's schedule, and when we were planting crops and when we're, you know, growing crops, we'd have a rest period in there. They are the busiest people I know in the summertime, but in the wintertime, farmers enjoy their rest. That's the way it is. They keep up with what they have to keep up with. And that's it. And so we should learn, right? That worked for us for a very long time. We've only for a very short amount of time been doing it this weird new way.
You know,
that doesn't seem to be doing us any justice. Right?
Well, it does. It really works out well for the handful of billionaires that are.
I did notice that. Yeah.
Whose lives are enriched by us ignoring everything that nature needs from us, and we need from nature. It's sit at your desk, 16-hour work days. We're going to call it a 40-hour work week, but no. And how dare you step outside for a walk? Whereas, you know, in an agricultural dominant sort of society, and not an industrial or tech-driven thing where it's all about shaving every couple pennies off of this product or that product. But hey, we've got things to grow. We've got animals to feed. We've got, you know, you do it you play by nature's rules, and things just logically shuffle out for you in terms of your overall well-being. You're going to bed because you're exhausted because you've been working all day.
And it gives you that stay in motion thing, right? Always in motion to some extent, right? And it also gives you this sense of being in the now all the time, because you're always talking about right now or tomorrow or right, and there's always a plan. And so there's never this that rush thing that happens to us, like we have to be the first to do this thing. That is industrialization. Farmers don't be like, I have to be the first to ripen my pumpkin. That's not how it happens, right?
It ripens when it ripens. And growing up on a farm, I mean, this is the first year that my dad is not, in my lifetime, and certainly since his own probably 20s, this is the first time where he's not prepping to go do all this field work and everything else. And it's like, man, he has been on like a devoted schedule at nature's mercy
Yep.
for his entire career. And it's really something to see how he processes time versus the rest of us.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I just think it's so much more organic because it lays in our rest. It tells us to stop. It like, you know, instead of, oh, you got to keep going all the time. That's craziness. That's insanity.
Well, it's understanding that some things are out of your control. You can't control everything, and you need to be responsive to the changes in the natural world.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. So we always like to leave our listeners, Becca, with a few little takeaways, a few little hints. You kind of started talking about that a little bit earlier in the podcast. But what would you say to kind of the full range of our listeners, which is a full range of humanity?
Well, it is. This is a conversation, right, about humanity, and it's great.
Yes.
And autistics are a part of that. We're not the only ones, and we really, what we can be though, is the ones that model how it should be. Right? We can be the ones that step outside of the groupthink mentality and say, we're doing it wrong and we're going to do it this way now. Right? Because it works better. And that's an autistic mentality. And that's going to be the difference is, we are the group that would take on doing things differently, I think. And really kind of being willing to look at things from a different perspective and address things from a different perspective. I know people say change is hard for autistics, but it is hard for human beings. Most people avoid change. And so they don't want things to change from the way they are. And so, we need to have things change and folks need to start doing stuff. And I think, you know what, we're already the different thinkers. We might as well be the different doers and go ahead out and build a world that is the world we'd like to see it be. Right. And let everyone else figure out if they can make it work. And that's sort of what I lay about with people to do is build that life, build the life the way that you want it to be. Right. Shut out the voices, listen to this voice and the voice in your gut and all of those things. Because people intrude, they step in on your life and people think they can ignore the difficulties in their life if they focus on the difficulties in yours. And so that's not helpful, though. Right. Let them go deal with their stuff and you deal with yours. And so we have to learn to set up some of those boundaries and make some of those choices that feel organic to us. Right. Like people would have I'm sure that the people even who live near me now still think I'm crazy, that I grew up in New York and I lived there for 40 years and I just up and moved to the Rockies and at the top of a mountain. Right. But that's what I was like, please send me to the polar opposite of how I am living. Right. And that's what I want for every autistic out there is if you're waking up every day and you're looking out your window like I used to, and you would just rather shut it and go back to sleep, it's time to start doing some work. It's time to start asking some questions. It's time to start remembering that you have autonomy in your life and you do have the ability to make choices. It may not feel all the time like you have a lot of choices, but you always have some choices. And once you start taking that autonomy back, you'll get more choices. And so that's kind of where it comes from. So if nature is something that you feel compelled, right, to spend time in, which I think everyone should spend some time in nature, some time breathing fresh air and just kind of being outside, touching grass, as they say. But also, I think there are some of us for whom there is an excessive amount of time that we require in that space, and you need to honor that. And if that's you and you're not living in accordance with that or in alignment with that, you're going to always be uncomfortable. So we have to do something about making it different.
And for parents of young kids, allow them to be kids out in nature.
Yes, please. My goodness. Like autistic kids are just kids. Please just let them experiment. Even if it looks weird to you, let them climb the weird thing or touch the dirty animal or whatever it is. That's your garbage, not their garbage. Like let them experience life.
Yes. Don't provoke a raccoon trying to usher its babies up a tree, but also don't flip out when when the kiddo's like, oh, look at this, and they pick up a caterpillar. Not oh god, don't touch it, it's gross.
Right, I hate that. You're yucking their yum when you do that. Don't do that. Let them be kids. I mean, we don't learn, especially autistics, do not learn well if we're not doing. And
Yeah.
so we
Right.
don't learn unless we failed ourselves, right? Like we have to fail some of the time. You have to let us fall sometimes.
Yeah.
You have to let us try and not like it. You have to let us like all of those things, or we will never be able to make decisions about ourselves.
There is
And
a book called The Blessing of the Skinned Knee.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's exactly what you're describing.
yeah. And if I could add, this is, I guess, directed to parents. Don't think that more hours sitting at a table is where learning happens.
No, I don't think I've ever learned anything. I've memorized lots of things at a table, but I don't think I've ever learned anything sitting at a table.
And also, I will extend that, Barry, to employers. Don't think that sitting at that desk for 4 hours is where productivity happens.
That
Like
is correct.
you have to let things marinate away from your desk.
Right.
Just
Walking
is.
meetings. That's what I say. Walking
meeting.
meetings.
There you
Standing desk, walking meeting. Yeah.
go. Or walking in nature during a meeting. Yeah. Great. Becca, thank you so much. This was terrific. It was everything we hoped it would be.
Great.
I know our listeners will come away with a lot of thinking from what we've discussed. And it's so important, especially for those of us in the Northeast who've come out of a pretty tough winter, but people across the country as spring and summer comes down the pike. So, yeah. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Becca.
Take care.
Bye.
You can't predict the future, but you can prepare for it. Arizona State University is building degrees for what's ahead. Programs designed around emerging fields, taught by faculty whose research is shaping our future, not just teaching about it. It's why we've been ranked #1 in innovation for more than a decade. Your future is worth preparing for, and you don't have to prepare alone. Future-proof your career. Explore more than 350 programs at asuonline.asu.edu. That's a degree better.